those fireworks I hear? It's the 1-year anniversary of the Steam Deck, and to be honest, it's been a weird first year for a piece of hardware. It's only available in a handful of regions, and even then we started with a very long waiting list that took over 6 months to get through. So while most people haven't had their Steam Deck for a year, February 25th is still the 1-year anniversary of the launch of the Steam Deck, and I happened to get mine around that time, so I think it's a great time for me to talk about the past 365 days. I'm going to talk about what the Steam Deck got right and what I'd like to see it still accomplish in the next year and beyond, but most of all, I'm going to talk about my experience with the Steam Deck, partly as a content creator, but mostly just as a gamer. Overall, the ride has been wonderful for me personally, but the Steam Deck is a device that may or may not be for everyone, so if you're still thinking about picking one up, maybe this can help you make your decision. If you do have a Steam Deck though, let me know in the comments what you've loved and what you've disliked about your time with the Steam Deck, because your comments may also be able to help people that are thinking about buying a Steam Deck. By the way, these videos tend to get new viewers, so if you're new to my channel, then hi, I'm Richard, this is Fan the Deck, and I've been making Steam Deck videos since months before it launched. I have followed the Steam Deck and its progress ever since its announcement, and I have a lot to say about its ups and downs in this video. If you do decide to get a Steam Deck, check out my ultimate starter guide and maybe subscribe to the channel and like the video to help this spread to more people. But first, guess what's back? That's right, the kill switch, brought to you by today's sponsor, Dbrand. Here's something you probably didn't know. Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson have both confirmed that the kill switch is the most protective Steam Deck case in the world. And while that's not actually true, and I completely made that factoid up, I can say that I dropped my Steam Deck in the name of science and it survived, thanks to the kill switch. This case sports military-grade impact resistance, at least according to Dbrand, who in a lot of ways cannot be trusted, but they can be trusted to make a quality product. So when I let my kids use the Steam Deck, it's only because it's protected by the kill switch. It has this new mount on the back that you can use for a kickstand, but you can also use it for other attachments that Dbrand is creating. They refuse to tell me what any of those attachments are, but they mumbled something about MK Ultra. Anyway, this thing is cool, and in addition to protection and utility, it has a great grip to it, and you buy it with a skin, so your Steam Deck is going to look at least as awesome as mine. Be sure to check it out at dbrand.com/fanthedeck, because using my URL is the only way to opt out of the military grade mind control program as far as I know. So yeah, dbrand.com/fanthedeck. So let me start with how I use my Steam Deck. The Steam Deck is by far my most used gaming platform, but I'll get more into that later. First things first, I happen to have two Steam Decks. One is a review unit that I received directly from Valve in late February, and the other is one that I purchased myself in late June of last year. I primarily use the newer Steam Deck, and I actually always keep this on the stable channel for updates. You see, Valve gives you the ability to opt into beta updates for the Steam Deck. That allows you to try new features, as Valve is still testing them, and therefore they may not be ready for prime time. But for my day-to-day use, I actually choose not to do this, even though there is some exciting stuff in there. I'm a software engineer and I like tinkering, but when it comes to playing video games, I consider myself a bit of a normie. Most of the time I just want stuff to work because I have a limited time to play games. So that's why I stick to stable on my main deck. As a result, I tend to use my other Steam Deck as the one to test new features and record stuff for my channel. I keep this deck on preview, and I'm more likely to install experimental stuff like beta versions of EmuDeck, Cryo utilities, and plugins. So I have a really unique situation where I use two Steam Decks, and even though it's a niche use case, Valve makes the experience of owning two Steam Decks kind of nice, because there are a few ways to share games between the two. If I have a game on an SD card, that's an easy way to share games because I can just swap the SD cards. Alternatively, I can use an external drive or a dock like the JSOX dock that has a built-in M2 drive. So that's another way to share games. And there's a new feature that allows you to download games from your PC to your Steam Deck. Right now, you can't use this to download from Steam Deck to Steam Deck, but I wouldn't be surprised if eventually this becomes a supported feature too. But none of this would matter if I didn't play the Steam Deck. As it turns out, Steam Deck was 80% of my playtime on PC last year, and PC is easily my most played platform overall. I have a Switch and a PS5 that I play every once in a while, but even that playtime is limited to exclusives that I can't otherwise play on PC. For years now, the thing I've enjoyed most about PC gaming is flexibility, and the thing I usually miss the most about console gaming is convenience. The Steam Deck is a really happy mix between the two, with what I'm going to refer to as Streamlined Flexibility. The Steam Deck comes with the flexibility of any other PC, and sometimes some things are harder to do than they would be on a normal Windows or even Linux desktop, but when people design with the Steam Deck in mind, like the developers of EmuDeck do for example, they follow the design philosophy of the Steam Deck itself and try to offer streamlined flexibility. EmuDeck, by the way, is the emulation tool designed for the Steam Deck, but can now be used on Windows PCs as well. It makes the process of installing and configuring emulators as streamlined as possible, and then adds your ROMs to your Steam library so you don't have to exit gaming mode to play them after your initial setup. On that same note, Decky Loader is a way to install plugins for Steam that makes it much easier to unofficially modify your Steam experience while staying inside of the gaming mode sandbox. Steam mods and plugins have existed before, but they've never been this useful and this streamlined. In effect, the Steam Deck as both a piece of hardware and software has really motivated developers of PC gaming tools to make those tools more streamlined and more easy to use. And it is this streamlined flexibility, both from the Steam Deck and from the surrounding tools, that fit my lifestyle so perfectly that the Steam Deck becomes by far my most played gaming platform. I'm a husband to an awesome and beautiful woman, father of 2 school-aged children, software engineer with a full-time job, and a part-time YouTuber. My gaming time is limited and I take what I can get, usually an hour or 2 before bed, plus whatever I can squeeze in on the weekends, so I need something streamlined. But I have a large gaming collection and I want the choice to play whatever my heart desires, whether it's a first-person shooter with no control pad support or a GameCube game I never finished. So I need flexibility. So when I say that the Steam Deck feels like it's tailor-made for me, I really mean it, and it's why I am able to accept more easily some of the flaws that I will get into later in this video. Given that the Steam Deck is my most used gaming platform, how much wear and tear have I put on this bad boy? Well, I haven't noticed any hardware malfunctions on either of my Steam Decks, and as of recording this, I've still done no hardware modifications, so here's what I can say. The fans are still not bothersome. All the inputs still work and feel like they did a year ago. There's no stick drift yet, and the battery life hasn't changed. The problems I have with the hardware now are the same problems I had day one, meaning that I still don't like the D-pad and I still don't like the Steam and Quick Access buttons. The Steam and Quick Access buttons have been revised and may be better in more recent models, but on my Steam Decks they kinda suck. I wish they had a tactile feel to them, and I wish they were more responsive regardless of what's going on in the game. But yeah, those are the day one complaints, and with 1 year of use, the Steam Deck still feels pretty new despite my frequent use. I think it's a testament to the very practical design of everything on the Steam Deck. Everything about the deck is more about practicality than beauty, and that means it's aged really well in the first year of use. This is not a video about Steam Deck accessories. If you want to know more about that, check out my accessories mega guide, but I will tell you about the accessories that I actually get a ton of use out of. Since that's somewhat limited actually, I get a ton of use out of an SD card, obviously, D-brand skins, the TomTalk carrying bag, Moondrop Quarks earbuds, and a non-valve power brick. These are my S tier accessories. Enough has been said about an SD card, so I won't belabor the point here. For skins, I prefer a matte texture and high quality, and D-brand has me really covered there, not to mention the variety of looks. The TomTalk carrying bag is a lot more practical for me than the Steam Deck case. I can put more in it, I can swap my Steam Deck for another handheld if I'm testing something new, and best of all, I rarely even worry if it's zipped. It's pretty hard for the Steam Deck to fall out of the TomTalk carrying bag, and that's a big plus for me. I just got the Moondrop Quarks based on a suggestion from another Steam Deck YouTuber, High Tech Lowlife. There's a decent amount of Bluetooth lag on the Steam Deck, so I wanted a cheap set of wired buds to play Hi-Fi Rush, and HTLL pointed me to this set, which is only $15. It has pretty good audio quality, but I'm also impressed by the overall quality because it comes with a little carrying case and the cables themselves seem resilient, so that's cool. But yeah, make sure to check out High Tech Lowlife's channel because he's always highlighting weird stuff like this, and that's how I knew to ask him in the first place. Finally, the non-valve power brick is really nice because I can use a longer cable and it's going to charge even faster. So those are my main accessories. I also use a bunch of other stuff based on how I'm feeling or what I'm doing, stuff like a dock, M.2 SSD enclosure, or handheld keyboard. But the 5 I mentioned get basically daily use from me, so I wanted to talk about them here. Of course, the most important thing about any gaming hardware is the games. In the case of the Steam Deck, that means which PC games are compatible and which PC games have system requirements that can be met by the Steam Deck. But there's also the matter of what you, the player, are willing to play on a device like this. Like, sure, technically you can get Returnal to run, but it's going to be literally at 27 FPS on 500p resolution with 90 minutes of battery life. So what are you willing to tolerate? Personally, I'm content if a game can run at a stable 30 FPS when it's at the native resolution of 800p. I'm even willing to go down to FSR quality, maybe FSR balanced, and I'm okay with just 2 hours of battery life since I'm rarely playing sessions longer than that. With those standards, I can play a lot of great games including many PS4 ports like Spider-Man Remastered and God of War. At some point, it will be common for newer AAA games to be at least as demanding as Returnal, and in those instances, the sacrifices are too great, I would say. But going back to how I personally use the Steam Deck, more than half of my gaming time is spent on indies that don't require much horsepower to be played at 60 FPS. My games of the year are often games like Neon White, Webbed, and Huntdown. And I also have a tremendous backlog of games from the 360 and PS3 era that I never finished, like Deus Ex and Tomb Raider. These sort of games are perfect for the deck because they make great use of the deck's custom APU with the ability to be played at lower wattages. That's great for me because I literally have a library of over 1,000 games like this that I love to play. From a compatibility standpoint, I rarely run into games that I want to play that don't run. Again, this is very specific to me as someone that loves indies and older games. If you're someone that's into modern online shooters, for example, you're gonna have to tread more carefully. There's no bones about it. Likewise, new AAA releases have had better compatibility than I expected, but it's not guaranteed and not something that can be taken for granted. If you're someone that always has to play the latest tentpole releases, it can honestly be a bit of a gamble on whether or not it's gonna work on a Steam Deck, and unlike other platforms, you typically don't know until after the game is released. Pre-orders are a gamble, and I would advise against them. Deck Verified was supposed to alleviate this problem, and I don't know. I'd love to hear from you all, but I don't look up Deck Verified at all. If I want to know if a game is compatible, I use ProtonDB. You can see reviews not just from Linux users on ProtonDB, but you can see who is reviewing specifically from a Steam Deck, so you get a really good idea of game compatibility that way. And if you do have a problem running it, ProtonDB may have steps on how to get it running using Proton GE or different launch options. It's certainly not perfect, and this is an incredibly difficult problem to solve, but yeah, I use this a lot more than Valve's own Deck Verified, especially because there is a Decky Loader plugin for ProtonDB, so I can always see its status from within Steam Deck. This is a no-brainer to me. Outside of native PC games, there are a lot of retro gamers out there that have opinions one way or the other on whether the Steam Deck is good for retro gaming, and here's the thing, when it comes to power usage, going with an x86 handheld for emulation is not nearly as efficient as going with an ARM handheld like the Iron Odin or other choices you may have. So if you only want a handheld for emulation, then maybe there are better choices for you out there. Again, I'm someone that primarily spends their time on native PC games, so when I do choose to fire up an emulator, I just want it to be on the platform I'm already using. Not to mention there's a decent chance that I'll want to modernize the controller layout using Steam Input or something like that. So the Steam Deck for retro gaming works well for me, and the EmuDeck makes it as easy as possible to set up. You can check out my mega guide if you want to learn more about EmuDeck. Alright, so I've told you a bunch about how I use the Steam Deck, but let's talk about the changes that Valve has made in the last year. From an availability standpoint, we started off the year with a launch in 4 regions, and even then there was a backlog in place. It took Valve the better part of 2022 to get through the backlog, and once they did, they announced the launch of the Steam Deck in 4 new regions in Asia. So 1 year later, the Steam Deck is only officially on sale in 8 regions of the world, and Valve has committed to looking into launching in more regions, namely Australia, but we still have no news on that front. There may be some manufacturing or supply chain constraints, but there's also just the logistical challenge of launching in new regions. Speaking of supply chain constraints, Valve has issued a number of hardware revisions in the last year, and these are mostly invisible to us as users, for better or for worse. Valve has used different hardware components from different suppliers like the fan or the RAM or the SSD. Some of these have been downgrades like the use of a noisier fan or the use of a theoretically slower SSD, but more recently these revisions have been upgrades, like when they engineered a foam solution to reduce the fan noise or when they upgraded the Steam and quick access buttons. Overall, I think the worst of the supply issues are behind us, and a lot of the hardware revisions we will see are intended to make the Steam Deck better or perhaps cheaper for Valve to manufacture. Software updates have been extremely frequent for the Steam Deck. There's an update to the beta channel almost every week, and on average, there's been a new major version quarterly, though that pace is picking up. As a result, the Steam Deck is a pretty different beast than it was a year ago. There have been performance improvements, input improvements, compatibility improvements, desktop improvements, and most importantly, I think, quality of life improvements. The new local game downloads, the horizontal performance overlay, the pinning of important notifications, the per game performance profiles, the lock screen, all of these things that have vastly improved the Steam Deck experience. That's not to mention the improvements to desktop Steam, like the new big picture mode that uses the Steam Deck UI. Valve is not afraid to continually update the OS and the software, and there's no doubt that we'll see more of that in year 2, and Valve already said that they're investigating disabling SMT where applicable for performance improvements in some games. Proton has also continued to see lots of improvements from Valve. This is most visible to us when it comes to new AAA games that are important enough to Steam and to Valve that they are willing to put in the work to create fixes immediately after a game launch to make sure that players can play the game on the Steam Deck. More than anything else about the Steam Deck, Proton is a living piece of software that will require a constant team maintaining it, but Valve has been committed to this effort for years and they show no signs of stopping. Similar to Proton is Valve's effort on Deck Verified. I've already said that I'm not a huge fan of Deck Verified for a few reasons, but there's no doubt that Valve has been working hard on evaluating games, which is important because they started with 50,000 games on Steam when the Deck launched, and of course that number has only grown since then. We are nearing 11,000 games that have been evaluated, and by the time this video is published, 8,000 will have been rated playable or verified by Valve. Despite my concerns, it is incredible that Valve has been able to evaluate that many games in the past year. Valve has not been the only one making incredible progress with the Steam Deck. You all have been too. Plugin loaders like Decky Loader and Crankshaft have gotten so good in the last year. I used to have a love-hate relationship with Decky Loader, but I am all in now. There are so many good plugins: Proton DB Badges, Steam Grid DB, CSS Loader, Vibrant Deck, Flatpak Updater, and EMU Achievements. Power Tools is also a must-have plugin for emulation, even though it can sometimes feel a bit unstable. I do plan on doing a mega guide for plugins, so look out for that. But yeah, these are amazing. Cryo Utilities is another example of this. CryoBite33 recently launched his V2 of Cryo Utilities, and he has a video to go with that, so I recommend you watch that. But it does provide some significant performance improvements that you should check out. There are also apps like Heroic Launcher, Lutris, and the aforementioned EMU Deck, all of which are really great additions to the Steam Deck. Seriously, this is a ridiculous amount of progress made by the community to be able to so easily use your Steam Deck however you want. I decided to put all my Steam Deck complaints in one place, and here they are. Number 1, you can't remote wake a Steam Deck with a standard controller. I've been told you can actually remote wake with a Steam controller using the Steam controller dongle, so that is great, and a good reason for Valve to give a Steam controller V2. Number 2, you can't download while the deck is in sleep mode. Yes, it's a PC and this would be incredibly difficult to implement, but that doesn't change the fact that people, including myself, would like this feature. Number 3, the Bluetooth lag is pretty bad for audio. I have pretty low standards, so I can usually make do, but it's not good. Likewise, I sometimes have a problem where my AirPods will disconnect when I launch a game. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I am on the stable channel. Number 4 is the verified system. I've already said plenty about the verified system, but yeah, I just don't find it useful. If other people do find it useful, then I don't mind being the minority on this one. It could just be me. And number 5 is the D-pad. It's not a terrible D-pad to be honest, but on a device where all the other inputs are pretty much perfect, I just do wish it had a better D-pad. Some of those flaws are pretty hard to fix, but I'm very optimistic about the Steam Deck's future. One thing that's been impressive from Valve is how they have provided improvements I didn't predict or expect, so I'm looking forward to whatever Valve surprises us with in the next year. I expect Valve to incorporate some of the performance options that are provided by Power Tools and Cryo Utilities. SteamOS 3.5 is already looking to be quite the improvement with an updated Linux kernel. I've said it so many times on this channel, but the number one thing I'd like to see is a Steam Controller 2. Well, technically the number one thing would be making the Steam Deck available to more regions, but outside of that, it's a new Steam Controller 2. Likewise, this is going to be an interesting year for the Steam Deck's competition. I'd like to see 6800U handhelds come down in price as we're waiting for the 7000 series APUs, and AMD has a rumored new generation of the Steam Deck chip. This chip may never make it past the R&D phase, but I'd love to see something like this be used for future Aya Neo and GPD and 1X player devices. 7000 series chips in general will be interesting as games continue to get more demanding, with Returnal being the most prominent recent example. It's impossible to match the Steam Deck's price, but the other handhelds continue to get better, and I can't wait to see what they have in store for year 2 of the Steam Deck to bring a little more competition to the marketplace. So I give the Steam Deck an A for ambition in its first year, but there's something more important than everything I've mentioned here today, and that is, what is your feeling on the Steam Deck? How has your time with the deck been, and what are you looking forward to in year 2? Post your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Deck Gang out. Goodbye!